General Hospital spoilers tease that a new and deeply disturbing obsession is taking hold across Port Charles, one rooted not in revenge or ambition, but in betrayal so profound that it's tearing through the very heart of Sonny Corinthos's world. At the center of this unraveling storm is the brutal realization that Sonny made a catastrophic error in judgment. In the wake of growing threats and shifting alliances, he placed his trust in Paul and Peter, two recently hired guards brought in to reinforce his security and stabilize his network. But instead of delivering protection, they delivered chaos. The truth is now painfully clear: Paul and Peter were not loyal employees. They were moles, carefully planted agents working directly for Jen Sidwell, the very man orchestrating Sonny's downfall from the shadows. What makes this betrayal even more chilling is the subtlety with which it unfolded. Paul and Peter didn't launch a loud attack or stage a violent coup. Their weapon was silence. Their strategy was invisibility. And by embedding themselves within Sonny's inner circle, they gained access to critical information, movements, and vulnerabilities, all while posing as his protectors. Their betrayal wasn't just about sabotage. It was psychological warfare. A campaign of trust slowly corrupted from within, and the damage they've done is more profound than any bullet ever could be. Sonny's decision to bring them in now stands as one of the most devastating missteps of his entire reign. In a world where instincts have always meant survival, this single lapse has opened floodgates to something far worse than external enemies: internal collapse. The realization has triggered an obsession in Sonny, an urgent, unrelenting need to retrace every moment, every assignment, every conversation that involved Paul and Peter. He's haunted by the idea that their presence may have contaminated every major move he made in recent months. Every failure now takes on new meaning. Every close call feels like a setup. And most devastatingly, the death of Natalia, the woman he tried to protect, now appears to have been part of their mission all along. This explosive revelation has ignited a chain reaction inside the organization. Longtime allies are shaken. Trusted advisors are paranoid. The very people who once stood at Sonny's side with unquestioning loyalty are beginning to wonder, if Paul and Peter were able to infiltrate this deeply, who else has been compromised? The ripple effects are destabilizing everything. Meetings are held in secret. Conversations are guarded. Relationships are fraying under the weight of suspicion. Sidwell didn't just send traitors, he infected Sonny's world with doubt. Even more terrifying is the psychological toll this has taken on Sonny himself. This isn't just a tactical failure, it's personal. Paul and Peter were in rooms with his family. They stood watch at his doors. They were assigned to Natalia's final days. And their betrayal doesn't just threaten his empire, it strikes at his identity as a protector. The guilt is overwhelming, not just because he made the wrong call, but because people suffered and died under the illusion of safety he provided. The idea that he might have unintentionally delivered Natalia into the hands of her killers is a weight Sonny may never fully recover from. And the consequences continue to mount. With the investigation into Natalia's death still ongoing, and the toxicology results pointing toward possible foul play, Sonny's position is growing more precarious by the hour. Every new piece of evidence strengthens the theory that Natalia didn't overdose on her own, that someone altered her medication, poisoned her alcohol, or manipulated her final hours to appear accidental. And with Paul and Peter as prime suspects, men with unrestricted access to her room and her schedule, the truth becomes clearer and more horrific. Jason, having already suspected something was off, is now leading the charge to uncover the full extent of the infiltration. His investigation has begun connecting dots: missing communications, falsified logs, misdirected assignments, all leading back to the moment Paul and Peter were brought on board. The pattern is undeniable. They weren't just watching. They were shaping events, steering outcomes. And Sidwell, always 2 steps ahead, had placed them like chess pieces weeks, perhaps months, before the game even began. This revelation is more than a betrayal, it's a full-blown transformation of Sonny's world. The rules have changed. The walls have cracked. The sense of invincibility that once surrounded the Corinthos name is now bleeding out. This isn't just about Paul and Peter anymore. Their exposure marks the beginning of a larger reckoning, one where Sonny must now question every face, every file, every friend. Trust, once his greatest weapon, is now a liability. And paranoia, once reserved for enemies, is becoming his new way of life. In the streets of Port Charles, whispers are turning to open conversations. Has Sonny lost his edge? Is the once untouchable kingpin now surrounded by ghosts wearing masks? And as Sidwell continues to make his moves from the shadows, one brutal truth becomes undeniable. Sonny isn't just at war with his enemies. He's at war with his past decisions. And this war may be the one he can't walk away from. Paul and Peter may have been just the beginning. But their betrayal has triggered a larger, more chaotic truth, that Sonny's empire is not only under attack, but that the rot may have already seeped too deep to cure. The shock of their exposure is still reverberating, and as more secrets rise to the surface, one thing is certain, the next betrayal won't be from the outside. It'll be from the heart of everything Sonny thought he could still control. The revelation that Jen Sidwell had successfully planted moles inside Sonny Corinthos' organization has become one of the most chilling developments Port Charles has witnessed in years. This was no ordinary infiltration. This was a strategic, calculated breach designed not just to observe Sonny's moves, but to dismantle him from within, quietly, surgically, and without warning. With Paul and Peter now exposed as Sidwell's embedded agents, the paranoia coursing through Sonny's world has taken on a life of its own. It's no longer about one betrayal. It's about an entire network possibly being compromised, and the terrifying reality that nothing, and no one, around Sonny can be fully trusted anymore. What's fueling this obsession further is that someone had tried to sound the alarm before it all spiraled. Brick, one of Sonny's oldest and most trusted allies, had been voicing concerns for weeks. He noticed inconsistencies in communication, delays in standard security protocol, and most disturbingly, subtle gaps in intel, gaps that only someone on the inside could have created. Brick had warned Sonny that something felt off, that the danger wasn't just outside the walls of the organization but potentially standing right next to him. But in a moment of overconfidence, or perhaps emotional fatigue from endless battles, Sonny didn't act fast enough. And now the consequences of that hesitation are unfolding in real time. Brick's warnings are proving prophetic. What once seemed like isolated incidents, missed handoffs, delayed reinforcements, unexplained disappearances, now fall into place like pieces of a puzzle, revealing a much larger, far more sinister picture. Sidwell wasn't simply trying to weaken Sonny's defenses. He was creating an environment where Sonny would doubt everything. And now that the truth is out, the psychological torment is just beginning. Sonny's mind has become a battlefield. Every memory, every deal, every private conversation now runs through a filter of suspicion. This obsession, this need to find out just how deep Sidwell's reach goes, is consuming Sonny. Every day brings a new lead, a new question. A new reminder that the enemy may not just be outside the gates but already embedded within the core of his world. People he once trusted with his life now look like strangers. Brick has doubled down on security sweeps, background checks, loyalty reviews, but even he admits the damage may already be done. The fear isn't just about what Sidwell has already done. It's about what he's planning next. And what's even more disturbing is how this betrayal is bleeding into every other corner of Sonny's life. His relationships are straining under the weight of secrecy. His allies are pulling back, unsure who or what to believe. Christina, still shaken from the fire at Charlie's, can feel the tension growing around her father. Sasha and Michael are tightening their circle around Daisy. And Jason, once the steady right hand who could fix anything, is now locked in his own war against Britt's unraveling obsession. All of it leads back to the same place, a storm that Sidwell unleashed, and a family now scrambling to hold itself together. What began as one infiltration has now erupted into a full-blown crisis. Sidwell didn't just plant informants, he planted fear, doubt, and instability. The obsession isn't only Sonny's now. It's contagious, spreading through the ranks, taking hold of everyone who once believed they were safe. And as Sonny begins to realize how deeply he's been played, the rift between what he thought he knew and what he's discovering threatens to break him entirely. This is no longer a question of loyalty. It's a question of survival. And as the walls close in, the realization becomes impossible to ignore. Sidwell's game has just begun. The real chaos, the reckoning, is only starting to take shape. The story of how Sidwell is systematically dismantling his two greatest enemies, Sonny and Selena, is no longer speculation. It has evolved into a living nightmare. One that is spreading like a virus through every corner of Port Charles. Sidwell isn't using guns, intimidation, or brute force. He's using something far more insidious, doubt. With surgical precision, he has begun to poison trust, implant traitors into Sonny's inner circle, and manipulate events so subtly that even the most vigilant eyes missed the signs. Now, the consequences of that deception are erupting, and the foundations of power that once seemed unshakable are beginning to crack. The fire at Charlie's pub was never meant to just burn wood and steel. It was a psychological strike, a symbolic act of destruction aimed directly at the alliance between Sonny and Selena. Christina nearly died in that fire. And while the immediate blame was placed on Selena's men, those close to the situation are beginning to see the hand of a puppeteer lurking just behind the flames. The evidence, the timing. The sudden vanishing of Sonny's two newly hired guards, Paul and Peter, all point to something far more coordinated. These weren't random acts of violence. They were calculated moves designed to sow division, inflame personal vendettas, and destabilize everything Sonny thought was under his control. Brick saw it first. He's always been the quiet sentry, watching, calculating, protecting from the shadows. And he warned Sonny. He noticed the gaps in security, the odd timing of missed check-ins, the inconsistencies in Paul and Peter's reports. Brick tried to sound the alarm that someone was moving pieces behind Sonny's back. But Sonny, distracted by crisis after crisis and worn down by the emotional toll of Natalia's death and Christina's trauma, didn't see it for what it was. And now, the price of that oversight is being paid in paranoia, fractured alliances, and a slow-burning war of attrition. The death of Natalia is no longer viewed as an accident. Her disappearance after Sonny promised her a new life in Belize, the toxicology inconsistencies, the tainted medications and suspicious behavior of the guards assigned to protect her, all of it is falling into place. Paul and Peter, once seen as loyal new additions to the security team, are now revealed to be plants, agents working for Sidwell, embedded deep within the organization. They had unrestricted access to Natalia, her belongings, and her movements. They disappeared the moment questions started being asked. And their betrayal is not just strategic, it's personal. Now, Sonny finds himself consumed by obsession. Not just with protecting his family or salvaging his empire, but with uncovering just how deep Sidwell's infiltration goes. Every conversation feels like a trap. Every meeting is shadowed by suspicion. Even his oldest allies, Jason, Brick, and Carly, can see the change. The cool, calculating leader is unraveling, fraying at the edges. And that is exactly what Sidwell wants. Because Sidwell is not merely trying to destroy Sonny. He's turning him into a weapon against himself. By framing Selena for arson and framing Sonny for Natalia's death, Sidwell is constructing a deadly illusion, one that pushes both power players into conflict with each other. Sonny now questions whether Selena betrayed him. Selena questions whether Sonny is trying to pin the fire on her to cover his own failures. The alliance, already built on cautious respect, is nearing its breaking point. And Sidwell watches it all unfold, never once exposing himself, never once leaving a trail. This is psychological warfare at its finest, methodical, invisible, devastating. And it's working. Jason, once the impenetrable fortress at Sonny's side, is now consumed by a different battle. Stopping Britt before her obsession with Daisy leads to irreversible consequences. Brick, while loyal and sharp, can can only do so much to hold back the flood of chaos that is rising faster than anyone anticipated. The Corinthos organization, once feared and untouchable, is becoming reactionary, fragmented, and disoriented. And that is Sidwell's victory. He doesn't need a gunfight. He doesn't need a courtroom. All he needs is time. Time for Sonny to destroy what remains of his network in search of truth. Time for Selena to misread a move and strike back. Time for Christina to spiral under the trauma. Time for Port Charles to look at Sonny not as a protector, but as a liability. That is the nightmare now closing in, not a war fought in the open, but a quiet, calculated implosion. Every day, the fear grows. Every hour, the cracks widen. And the most terrifying part? Sidwell isn't done. This was only the beginning. His war isn't about victory. It's about annihilation, of trust, of reputation, of legacy. And if Sonny doesn't realize the full scope of what's happening, if he can't find a way to see past the illusions, he won't just lose control. He'll lose everything. Selena had survived wars others wouldn't dare name. She had risen through blood, silence, and strategy, navigating the brutal undercurrents of Port Charles with a mind sharper than any blade and a will forged in fire. She built her empire not through brute force but through alliances, respect, and fear. But as the web of deceit surrounding her tightened, spun not by rivals she could face but by a phantom operating in silence, by Sidwell, she began to realize that the game had changed. The rules had been rewritten, and this time, even she couldn't see the full shape of the trap until it had already begun to close. Selena had always known death was a possibility. But never did she imagine it would come like this, not with blood in the streets, but with betrayal in the shadows. In her final days, she became more isolated, more haunted. Her instincts screaming that something was coming, something she could no longer negotiate with, silence, or control. The fire at Charlie's pub had been the first warning, an attack not on her property but on her position, her name, her legacy. With Christina nearly killed and Selena framed through carefully planted evidence, she saw the shape of something far more dangerous than rival turf wars. She saw the hand of Sidwell, quiet, invisible, and devastating. And as her world began to narrow, allies disappearing, contacts going dark, accounts suddenly frozen, Selena did something she had never done before. She recorded a message. Not just a confession, but a declaration. She knew she was dying. Whether it would come from poison in her tea, a bullet from an old enemy, or a staged accident masked as coincidence, it no longer mattered. What mattered was what she left behind. In that message, encrypted and sent to Brick, Jason, and an anonymous journalist, Selena revealed a secret so deeply buried, so intricately wrapped in decades of maneuvering, that it threatened to implode not just Sonny's empire, but the entire structure of organized power in Port Charles. She exposed the truth. Sidwell had not simply infiltrated Sonny's organization. He had also gained influence over high-ranking individuals in the police department, certain judges in family court, and even whispered through the corridors of the WSB. But the most devastating part of Selena's confession was not about Sidwell's external control, it was the internal betrayal. She named a mole inside her own network. Not a low-level informant or an easily bought traitor, but someone she had raised, mentored, protected. Someone who had once called her family. That person, whose name, when spoken in the message, turned Brick pale and left Jason speechless, had facilitated the false trail leading to Selena in the Charlie's fire. That person had provided the information Sidwell needed to cut Selena off from her resources, to strangle her without touching her. That person had sold her to her enemy in exchange for power. The confession was sent moments before her death, whether orchestrated by poison, an induced cardiac event, or a car that spun out on a mountain road under suspicious conditions. Selena was gone. But her final act was a detonation. Brick, upon hearing the recording, dropped his glass mid-sentence. Jason listened in silence, his jaw clenched, a rare look of shock flooding his normally unreadable face. Sonny, when he heard it, said nothing for a full minute, then simply left the room, fists clenched, breath short. As if holding in a scream that could break the world. Selena's death, and her final revelation, changed everything. Because it wasn't just about Selena being murdered. It was about the betrayal she unearthed. It proved that Sidwell wasn't just trying to destroy reputations, he was targeting identities. Dismantling the psychological integrity of the city's most powerful players. And worse, he was succeeding. For Sonny, the revelation meant his deepest fear was now real. No one was safe. No alliance sacred. No blood unbreakable. The mole inside Selena's camp meant that someone had been close to him as well, and perhaps still was. It meant that everything, Natalia's death, Christina's near death, the framing of Selena, the media leaks, even the growing fractures within his own house, were orchestrated with surgical precision. And now, he was not just dealing with the fallout of one betrayal, but living inside the aftermath of a full-scale invasion. For Brick, Selena's death was a personal failure, the one person he respected for her code, for her loyalty, for the cold elegance with which she ran her operation. He had always understood Selena better than anyone else. And now, she was gone, and he had been too late to stop it. That grief, for a man like Brick, was fuel. And Sidwell had just created a new enemy, one who wouldn't rest until every thread of his empire was exposed and burned to ash. Jason, who had seen the worst of human nature and survived it, now stood on the edge of something he couldn't control. With Britt unraveling on one side, Daisy being watched by unseen forces, and now Selena's confession. He understood that the city he thought he knew had shifted under his feet. The center could no longer hold. And with Sonny destabilizing, he knew it would fall to him to hold the line, not just for one family, but for the soul of Port Charles. Selena's secret, her final act, did more than reveal a name. It revealed a truth no one wanted to face. Sidwell wasn't just targeting power. He was reshaping the very definition of it. Turning allies into suspects. Turning protectors into predators. And turning grief into a weapon. Now, with Selena dead, Sonny consumed by fury and paranoia, Brick haunted by failure, and Jason preparing for war, the game has changed forever. Because in Port Charles, secrets don't stay buried. And when the dead speak, as Selena did, the living are forced to answer.